would say is as well is for for the motivated landlords that are on here, for people that are wanting that speed and security quicker, if we set a typical 28-day auction, it's going to run for 4 weeks. If we have an absolute shed load of interest that comes in and we start getting bids on day 3, 4, 5, and the vendor says, you know what, let's pull that auction date forward, let's not keep people waiting for so long. Because people, I mean, if people are waiting another 3 weeks, there is always the opportunity they can find something else, or they get cold feet, or whatever that may be. Again, the seller has control in order to adapt how long that auction date is going to be for. So if we think it's going to be priced really, really well and attractively on the market, we might actually recommend a 2-week auction cycle as opposed to a 4-week, because then we're going to keep buyers hot and we're going to keep them in there. And we want to make people make quick decisions, essentially, because the property is there and it's available now, and we're not expecting it to be available for very long. So should the vendor want to secure that sale sooner, they can close that auction at any given moment. So if they say to me, Jason, that offer that's on the table right now, I am more than happy with that, close that auction immediately. We can close that auction at any time and secure that sale for you there and then, whether that's day 1, day 10, day 28. And likewise, on the other side of that, if the vendor wants it to run a little bit longer, if 4 weeks is too soon, again, the time of year you're coming up to, people are away on holiday for a little while, or whether that may be, that can be amendable and completely flexible to the seller's circumstances.
And just, I know that first point, because we get this occasionally, so like if people, you've mentioned a seller could accept an offer before the auction sort of cycle ends, but am I right in thinking if it say the auction cycle's end and reserve hasn't been met, there becomes a period of negotiation potentially, doesn't there? So if a seller wanted to go back to a bidder, for example, and work with you guys to come up with something that's acceptable?
Absolutely. So if we fall just short of the hurdle at the end of the auction, let's say, for example, you got a reserve price on there of 50,000, highest bid's 48. I mean, we'll always try and have that conversation with the seller with regards to the bids that are currently on the table on the day of the auction anyway. So we'll say, look, we kind of have an indication as to who's going to be bidding on a property before the end of the auction comes to a close. So we have an insight as to how many people are verified, how many people are registered for bidding on this property, how many people we have keeping an eye on the property, and how many bids have physically been made. So we'll always set that expectation with the seller on the morning of the auction and say, look, this is where we're looking. You've got your reserve at 50,000. We'll have a bidder at 48,000. As it stands, we don't have any indication that anyone else is going to come in with another bid. So first of all, what's your thoughts on the figure? Is it okay, well, we'll see how it plans out. That's not a problem at all. That bid, what I would say, and this is important for landlords, is that bid is only legally binding at the point of offer acceptance. Okay, so let's say, for example, the auction comes to a close at 48,000. By all means, I mean, don't get me wrong, 9 times out of 10, if someone's willing to offer £48,000, as soon as that hammer falls on reserve isn't met, it's very, very rare that buyer's ever going to go, I'm not paying that anymore. They'll always kind of want us to have that conversation with the seller, and we can go back and say, look, the auction ended at this, we didn't quite meet what you wanted to do, but we can go back to this buyer now, we can see if we can meet in the middle, we can see if we can get him up to this point, but we'd always have that conversation with the seller and make sure that they're happy for us to have that conversation. If they're happy for us to say, look, the vendor's expectations are really 50,000, can you come to that figure? Yes, okay, not a problem at all, that's fine. But we would never disclose any of that information without having that conversation with the seller.
So it almost becomes like a hybrid model, doesn't it, if that makes sense? So if bidding doesn't get you where you need to be, then it almost becomes just a sort of negotiation process.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, that's something that will always be discussed with the seller. It's something that will always be put forward to them as to, these are our options. What would you like to do? Do you want to try and have a negotiation with this buyer? Do you want us to see if we can get to where you need to be? Or do you want to run it another auction cycle and see if we can drum up any more interest?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. And then we often get we have touched on this, but about mortgage finance and the ability to buy at auction. Often comes up, people think they can't buy, and then sellers think they're limiting their market, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
That they're only ever going to appeal to cash buyers. So if you're prepared to say a little bit more about that, but I think that causes confusion on both buyer and seller's parts, if I'm honest.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is, to be honest, even on our side, this is probably one of the more common questions or concerns as to, am I in a position to purchase an auction? am I financially in that position to be able to do so? One thing I would say, providing the seller's happy with, we can allow for anyone to buy via auction, and there's a few different techniques that we essentially can roll out that can allow mortgage buyers, whether that first instance is, okay, let's extend that completion time from 28 days to 56 days. That is a huge one, because ultimately that's now allowing you the time that your mortgage advisor and your conveyancer for the finance application needs in order to complete that transaction. 56 days is more than enough time to get a buyer via finance at auction. And that's purely down to the fact that the solicitors have already provided the searches, they've already got that legal pack ready. So most of that work that your financial advisor or your conveyancer needs is already done. So because we can provide that information up front, you'll tend to find that a lot of that puts a lot of mortgage buyers at ease, because before they even make an offer, you can send this paperwork across to your financial advisor and say, am I in a position to do it? And they'll 9 times out of 10 say, yeah, absolutely, of course you can.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It definitely causes confusion to both parties, and I think it limits the people who think, you know, this route could be applicable to them.
We always say it is anyone can buy at auction, and realistically any property can sell at auction. Doesn't mean every property will, but every property can, providing that the strategy is done correctly, that the pricing from the seller's point of view, that they're financially covered, but most importantly that advertising prices, it's set right, and at that point any buyer can buy, because there's so many different finance options available now as well. It's not just your regular mortgage, there's various different finance options out there available that will allow you to purchase via auction.
No, thank you. As I say, I think this session will be really useful. As a team, we probably spend a lot of time, you know, like with these misconceptions, sort of explain them. So it's been nice the last few weeks to be able to invite people to this event, and you know, we'll continue to do so, because I guess, you know, if you're not familiar with this model, there are a lot of new features that, you know, for people to sort of to understand. So it's really useful to deal with some of these misconceptions about how it works and how it can benefit people, and you know, and frankly some of the shortfalls of how sales have traditionally been transacted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, certainly.
I know we've mentioned obviously that I do challenge Danny occasionally with the odd houseboat, which was,
that's where I laughed. I saw it. Houseboats.
Land is one we really like. Not something we deal with particularly as a letting agent, but we've had some good success with sort of clients with land without planning. Commercial property, obviously. Houseboats is an odd one, but we have had the odd one.
It's down in Essex, wasn't it?
It's what, sorry?
It was down in Essex, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. I do like to ring you occasionally and be like, I've got a strange question, at which point Danny sort of really scared. It keeps it interesting.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
And obviously, holiday homes, but if I understand correctly, they have to have a deed, don't they? It can't be movable. Is that the definition? So it would have to be a property, we're not talking caravans, are we? So it would have to be a property with a deed, so to speak.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, you go, Jeff. Sorry.
I was going to say, not necessarily. Yeah, I mean, we, in terms of static caravans, in terms of lodges, in terms of anything like that, yeah, we actually sell quite a lot of them, especially right across country. I mean, you'll tend to find a lot in the likes of Skegness and things where there's these holiday parks where they are quite popular. By all means, no, you can certainly sell them. It actually becomes an even more simplified process than the standard auction, because for those types of lodges, etc., you don't actually need a full legal pack as well. So there's actually less work entailed in a transaction for a holiday home, like a log cabin or a static caravan. But yeah, absolutely, you can certainly still sell them via auction.
Wow, okay.